Alright, EA Ermor, turn 77. This one is a complete mystery to me. I remember nothing. Let's see. I'm sure it's only good things. Let's see. Another Nifl Jarl here, claiming another throne. So I'll take a look this turn, assuming I don't forget. But how close like Niflheim actually is to winning. We know that is a danger. And then let's see, a Dire Portent. That's always good news. Hey, this is actually Xibalba, so that's not too bad. Let's see, this is Earth, Blood, Deep, well, it looks like. So they're going to be getting a bunch of Earth gems every turn. So, this isn't good. Xibalba is not our friend, but they're also not our neighbor. So, I haven't actually reached out, but Xibalba is probably a good candidate for, one of the only players we are likely to be friendly with. So, as Dire Portents go, it's actually not too bad. We bring in Alar, we bring in our birds for patrolling, and this is, part of why, right, we need patrolling. So, we have an Augur get seduced. I'm not sure. We'll have to take a look, where this is, but if we don't have patrollers, then he can just sit on top of our forts, right, and just keep seducing our mages, pretty regularly. I mean, it's always going to be a threat when we're moving our armies around, but we, that's just part of the losses. But we really don't want it to be happen. We don't want to just give them free mages on top of our forts, even though augurs aren't fantastic for anybody at this point. And then we have more of the attacks this turn. I like to see that. Right, so this is our rating. Wow, man, he's got money. So we could die here, and definitely we're not going to have our magic duel cover I guess they're going to shoot their arrows, but I just can't imagine that our augur is going to survive. Our lich, though, liches are pretty hard. Yeah, I think there goes our augur. Liches are pretty hard for mundane units to deal with. I actually think we have a pretty good chance at coming away with this. That said, a bunch of lance strikes could be pretty dangerous, so we'll see, but we like the living units because we can soul drain them, and morale for these units is not going to be great, so terror is okay. Advance and cast spells maybe arguably we shouldn't have. Do we put this guy's got a lion pelt on him, so with his invulnerability as well, as long as we're not up against any fire magic, which we're not, it's not impossible that a lucky hit gets through, right, and routes us. So, I mean, in some ways this is a bit brittle, but we're also, pretty safe. That's pretty unlikely. You can see that, they're really just not able to do anything. We've already routed one of the squads. There goes another squad. So, province defense is only going to carry you so far. And, raiding with a really valuable asset like this has a lot of downsides because, if it's light PD investment, it's kind of a waste of time and resources. But, if you're facing significant province defense dumps like that, then there's definitely reasons for that. So we'll see if we're up against another PD dump here. No, not really. It's funny, I was expecting the PD dump here because I knew that this was an Amazon province because there's just the two saddest Amazon provinces next to each other. There's very low population. The Amazons aren't going to be able to deal with two fire elementals, and we still have a communion, and I'm just kind of curious to see what our fatigue level is at. The one danger is that we burn out our communion. This guy's really damaged. Oh, that's because he's dying from a disease. That's the other thing. So we'll have to take a look at this. We have somebody route off because we're a little too close for the soul vortex, so whoops. But it does work out for us. We don't really lose anything that we can't afford to lose. So we lose one of the leves, and some of them retreat off. But we're not up against too much there. That was not a province defense dump. And then this is probably another raid. Right, this is our main... Oh, no, this is our main army. Moving forward, in that province. This is the swarm person. So somehow she managed to get more gems, or maybe she just didn't use both of her gems. But swarm is not going to matter, right, for this army. Nor will a little bit of barbarian province defense. So we lose nothing. We kill that Jade Sorceress. She didn't really have anywhere to go, so, I'm sure that's not the end of the world for Russ. And then we get attacked in a location by Russ. So let's see. This is our single Equite, who's unled, of course. This is on top of the throne, and so this is where one of the skin shifter groups went. Some mundane movement with the Prophet. So this is probably the group that was in Helheim. So there's we'll see where the other group went. It is entirely possible that they are in this fortress and that Russ used all of his assets against us this turn. No, he didn't. Ooh, unfortunately, there are some skin shifters in here. Nobody to bless them. That's kind of cool. I was expecting maybe some garbage, and this is going to be a problem because sea trolls are not great. Yeah. So hopefully we'll kill a bear. No, we don't. So like, yeah, that's really good. And you know, I saw some of those skin shifters in there before. Like I should have remembered that. But I just figured he would have grabbed them. But like, that's kind of cool. So now like we actually have to commit like something. And what's worse, you know, is that assumedly those skin shifters teleported to Satis. And sadly we didn't see that battle. So maybe there wasn't a battle. But anyway, there's just a much higher likelihood that his second group of skin shifters are going to be available to defend that fort, and that other group of skin shifters is next door, so like he could potentially even move like all of the skin shifters that he has like onto that fort. And like we really like 30 skin shifters I think our army can beat. Like 60 skin shifters like plus his god and everything, like now we're starting to get into scary territory. So yeah, that's kind of unfortunate that like we failed in that assault, and you know, definitely highlights the downside of trying to do things on the cheap. So we have some unexpected events, got some air gems, that's cool, got a few blood slaves, also nice. We still maintain the breach, right? That's on that fort we just failed in. And then yeah, some patrolling, and I will catch you guys after the jump. All right, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. Yeah, kind of another rough turn. Not that like anything particularly bad happened, but yeah, it was just very sad to forget about those skin shifters, especially because I think everything else I calculated correctly. And now, yeah, like now we're probably going to have to face, I don't know, probably. Russ definitely still has a lot of other problems, but there's a good chance we're going to face a good amount of skin shifters. If we take a look, Satis is no longer cracked, so it is still under siege by Niflheim, but I think there was a failed assault here, and, you know, probably the reason there was a failed assault is because a bunch of skin shifters gatewayed in. I was like, didn't we have a scout? Like, I'm like, couldn't understand why we hadn't seen that battle, and went and checked, and like, yeah, we did have a scout moving there, but of course he was an old man dying of disease, and he died of disease, you know, before he got there, and so we didn't see that battle. But yeah, so you know, Russ they're going to now get to like gateway again, which like, yeah, is just not ideal. We can see that like Niflheim has at least locked down this throne and has actually cracked it as well. So I mean, you know, like I said, Russ is still under a lot of pressure from Niflheim, and related to that, you know, we're still not planning on pressuring Russ in the north. Like on the contrary, we're actually kind of digging in. I am concerned, right? We know that obviously Russ took Eternal Pyre and Flames from the Sky, which is the opposite, strategic nuke spell that causes a lot of problems for human nations, is very much going to be on the table for them, depending on, they'll probably have to do a little bit of empowerment or with the right amount of boosters. They won't have a ton of mages that can cast it, but especially with their Pretender, who's pretty busy doing other things, but I'm sure he'll find time in due course to hit us with that spell. And we don't currently have a dome on Ermor, so we're actually moving some of our human troops out. Let's see, yeah, so all of our gladiators and our sacreds, and it's like it's a pretty short hop for us to get back, right? And, you know, mostly what we're going to leave in there, we still have a lot of augurs who we may move out as well soon, and, you know, just kind of leave like pretty much just fire snakes in here, a few bodyguards for our equite, but yeah, I'm expecting like Flames from the Sky at some point on the capital. That's another reason these guys are coming back to this fort. So, you know, because we've had a lot of stuff stacked up in Ermor for a long time, and so I think it's just a matter of time before we get hit with that. Now, I mean, granted, there's plenty of other things Russ could do. I don't think we're going to get hit with it immediately, but if he is able to turn Niflheim around fairly effectively, and feels like, okay, like now is the time to move against Ermor. You know, we can see that he's re-sieging this throne, hasn't cracked it yet, so maybe it's just a thug locking it down. We're going to go take a look. But like this pretty significant force is just hanging out. It is mostly just, you know, siege chaff, kind of garbage, right? The long dead horsemen and the researcher wizards. But still, you know, could form like the core, ready to gateways in his skin shifter stack, and then moves on our capital. So yeah, so we're just going to dig in the north, right, and like spread some stuff out so that it won't be as painful if we get hit with that. And also part of that is it looks like things are going really poorly for Vanheim, right? So this is Vanheim's capital. That's a Fomorian flag. And we can see that like this fort is cracked and under siege. This is probably the main or one of the main Fomorian armies. So we're going to try to go take a look at that. And like, yeah, you know, I don't think Vanheim's main stack has fought yet, and it is powerful, but unfortunately, like the war I think has kind of already been lost. That is one of the problems with Vanhears, is that they move really slowly. Vanheim actually, I think, really wants to be coastal because they have sailing, which allows them for pretty good mobility. Once they go inland, those Einherrs are pretty much like one province a turn, right? And we know that they took Abyssia, right? And so like that's just a long way for them to like walk home. So it's going to take them a long time. And, you know, in the meantime, like Fomorya either got lucky or with some good scouting, right, picked a really good moment to attack Vanheim, and it looks like Vanheim didn't really have much in reserve, and that's can be the way it works, like with the elves, right? Their stuff is really strong, and it's really hard to tell where it is, but they oftentimes don't have that much stuff. So while Vanheim, you know, is not out of it, right, in the same way that Russ's capital is really important for skin shifter production, Vanheim's capital is really important for his Vanheir production, right? They're capital only. So his really scary sacreds, like he cannot replace those at all anymore. His cap only mages are not essential, but definitely very useful. So, you know, he can still get some powerful mages out of some of these other forts that he hasn't lost. But, you know, the other angle, right, is that a lot of Abyssia's territory is less valuable due to the death scales. So, yeah, I don't know what Vanheim's core territory looked like from a resource standpoint, but it probably isn't as bad off as the territory they picked up. So, you know, they traded more valuable territory and territory they can get their really good stuff out of for less valuable territory. So I don't think Vanheim's going to be able to pull this out, especially since Fomorya seemed pretty good, which means there's a good chance, I mean, who knows, right? Fomorya could do a lot of things. I think Calum is an attractive option, but like I said, you know, I did reach out about them attacking Russ, mentioning that, like, yeah, the war wasn't going great for me, and they never responded. So that's not a good sign. And, you know, like, yeah, they mentioned they had good relations with Russ, so it could be, you know, essentially the situation I was trying to engineer for Russ, I may have engineered for myself. So we'll see. I probably, like I said, should reach out to Xibalba. They are a potential counterweight to Fomorya, and I think Fomorya is going to be a more attractive target for them to fight than Niflheim, because the bats don't love the cold either. And, you know, it looks like we took a look at this fort, so like there's nothing in this fort, at least that we can see. Fomorya does have a few elven units, but they are somewhat limited. And of course, I mean, you know, you can't take all this territory this quickly without, you know, expending a lot of resources. So a lot of Fomorya stuff is, you know, in this basically the same thing that just happened to Vanheim, maybe, you know, could happen to Fomorya. So, you know, we're trying to scout around here. We'll talk to Xibalba and see if they have any interest in that at all. This is all hypothetical, of course, like who knows, you know, what Fomorya is going to do. In the meantime, right, we're still very much fighting Russ. Would ideally, you know, I knew that this wasn't going to be a great war for us. Discussed about, you know, how we try to negotiate such that it would never happen in the first place, but, you know, here we are from miscommunications. I think probably at any point getting out of this war, like, would have been better, right? Some of that is just stubbornness on my part, and also, like, we're not realistically going to win this game, and Russ is a really interesting opponent, so, I mean, I've definitely learned a lot, and in that sense, it's been a really good war. But I also think at this point, like, Russ is, I think, similarly stubborn, or at least strikes me that way. Like, who knows? But I don't really think we're going to be able to take all this stuff from them and get them to agree to like any kind of long-term peace. So I get the sense that we're going to have to fight Russ for the rest of the game. So we'll see. You know, once we achieve our objectives, I'll definitely reach out. But you know, not optimistic about getting out of this war. And then, you know, to that end, we've got these skin shifters here, and we're just going to move everything back onto this fort. So, you know, we've talked through most of this. I think we'll be able to take it. If the other skin shifter group gateways in, we will see that. We are scrying on this province this turn, so we'll at least know that we're going to get hit with the full force of the skin shifters. The only good news is that, like, there's absolutely no mage support with this, and we have, you know, a lot of mage support. We also have Army of Gold now. We're going to teleport a guy in. Let's see, this fellow, right, who's going to be able to do turn 1 anti-magic. He's not going to die to Murdering Winter. He probably won't die to Flames from the Sky. Flames from the Sky won't be very effective here, so we're expecting, you know, another Murdering Winter attack on this province. And like most of our stuff now isn't going to care about that. We will lose a few things, but more or less the army operates without those. They're just bonus. So, you know, we're going to use everything against it. We'll see, right? He may choose to not send any more defense, and in that in that way he kind of wins out because he gets to do a bunch of other stuff, right? Well, we've spent a lot of time because like now we have to move back. It's even slower than if we just stormed with everything. So yeah, really kicking myself about, not going back and double checking what was actually in that fort. But there's a lot of things going on. It's easy to make mistakes like that. It happens. One nice benefit from this is I actually noticed that like we don't have to go through Femoria as like 1, 2, 3, and then like we could just actually like backtrack 1, 2, 3. Same distance. It's just, I just didn't like, it's counterintuitive. It's like, this looks like we are going in the opposite direction, but just the way the province connections work, it's going to take us the same amount of time. So we don't actually have to go through Femoria's territory and antagonize them, which is good because like I said, there's a fairly good chance. I mean, they're already our neighbor and they're probably just going to be a absolutely massive neighbor of ours who we have no treaties with. And like, yeah, maybe they decide to attack us. So I'm sure us moving through their territory is not going to improve the odds that they do not attack us. So that's the main thing. We're just sending this raiding force here to finish out what's left. For us PD dumps, that's fine. It's possible he teleports some of his commanders in, which could be problematic, but it is what it is. Like if that's how he wants to, spend his resources, then like we will have stuff nearby. Like we're gonna have to march through this area anyway, like I just talked about. So like, yeah, we can deal with that. And that's not a big deal. We are turning the Mind Hunt battery back on. I was very tempted, to go after the Prophet, but I actually looked it up and worked it out. There's a table that can tell you like the likelihood of how the DRN rolls are likely to go, depending on the differential, and based on his Prophet's magic resistance and the amount of penetration gear and everything we can bring to bear with our Mind Hunters, it's a 6.2% chance, which is not great. And again, this is definitely one of the downsides of like, yeah, we're an astral nation, but we don't actually have like really high astral, and when you have paths above what the spell requires to cast, that helps with your penetration. Like we're right at the level, right? We need 2 boosters with our astral randoms, and then we can just barely cast it. So it is pretty difficult for us to break through even like relatively modest magic resistance. Like, I mean, this is decent, right? He's given him some magic resistance gear, so 22 is like by no stretch of the imagination bad, but like it's also not great. Like you can get much higher magic resistance than that. So we're not going to bother trying to mind hunt this. Instead, we're going to mind hunt here because we can see a traitorous augur. So this is where his seducer has gone to, and the seduction is happening from this fort. And I imagine he's probably just going to keep coming back and seducing. I don't think those seducers, A, they don't have a ton of gear slots, right? And then B, they need to use those gear slots in case they fail a seduction and have to fight in an assassination battle. So they need to use those to make sure they win the assassination battle. So they probably have relatively modest magic resistance. Unfortunately, like we're probably also some of our mind hunt attempts, or maybe both, will hit our own augur. But, hey, if we kill a traitorous augur, it is what it is. It's not bad. Otherwise, recruiting a little bit of legionary infantry right on our border with Femoria. As discussed, a little bit concerned about where that's going to go. Full mage recruitment everywhere. Like mostly, actually, it's just, we started an Augur Elder here, but mostly it's just our Augur Elders kind of finishing off in various places. So we'll see what kind of roles we get with them. I'm still not really convinced that it's going to be a great use of our money. Like at this point, it's kind of crazy, but I'm starting to wonder, it's like maybe just a bunch of legionary infantry groups would be better use of our time. Like once we hit like a certain minimum critical mass of augurs, we'll see. Maybe our mages won't be quite as susceptible to whatever Femoria is doing, but I mean that'll only be true if like Femoria chooses not to cast those kind of spells, because they're gonna have access to them like if they want to, and yeah, just from their play, I can't imagine they wouldn't use the same kind of tactics against us. So, like I said, we'll see. We're going to get a Lich next turn, and we'll have some Death Gems left over. So, especially if we get some air randoms, we'll maybe like twice spawn those guys, use them in some raiding capacities, get them killed. And like, yeah, we'll see. And then I guess the last 2 things of note, kind of research and like, new ideas or kind of old ideas. So, I talked about why we're going to Conjuration 7. Unfortunately, we don't actually have anybody that can bring in Ivy Kings. I thought we had a booster, but we don't. We don't actually have the ability to forge it. So we'll have to do a little bit of empowerment in order to be able to bring one of these guys in. So Yeah, that's not great. We don't have a ton of nature gems or a ton of nature income, but it's probably still worth it in the long run, so we're just going to have to cool it a little with our nature forging and summoning, so that's a bit sad. And then otherwise, like going to Evocation 7 and really starting to think like, okay, let's give Firestorm a shot. Kind of the crazy thing, the reason we have the arm for our pretender, right, is for the ledge shield. I think I've mentioned that at this point. But anyway, yeah, we can get our magic resistance on our pretender up to pretty ridiculous levels, right, once we get everything on him. And he is high enough in air that he can cast Storm and Wrathful Skies. And the advantage of that wipe, I mean, it's going to be problematic for us in a lot of ways. And it's actually, it's a little on the crazy side, right, because like Russ has these cap only mages, right? And like their whole thing is like how they get to be like this. They have to get hit by a lightning strike and survive. So they have 20 shock resistance. So they're really not going to care about it. But he doesn't have any shock resistance on his bless for his skin shifters, and they don't have it built in natively. So the skin shifters are really what we're more worried about. And I just don't think he's really going to expect it. Like nobody expects early age Ermor to cast Wrathful Skies. So there's a certain strength to the unexpected. So that's kind of going to be our defense like on the capital, and with our pretender, that's really the only place that we can pull that wipe off. And the advantage of that wipe is that the lightning bolts do a lot of damage, so they're going to kill the skin shifters in fewer strikes, which means fewer magic resistance checks that we have to pass, which is important because of Blood Vengeance. The other wipe that we can deploy, kind of all over the place is Firestorm, which is not going to do as much damage, so that's more magic resistance checks. And probably the best casters for that are going to be our flame spirits. I mean, obviously they have the susceptibility to cold that's going to be a problem, but we can gear them to fix that. But they don't actually have like great magic resistance. I think we've talked about it a little bit before, when they killed themselves in Agartha. So like this guy we've given a bunch of gear to. We could get him like a ledge shield. Like we could push this up a bit more, and like with anti-magic going off, I think it's like +3 or +4. So like this could get pushed up to decent amounts, but again, since Fire Strike doesn't deal as much damage, that's a lot more hits to kill his skin shifters, and so a lot more checks. So yeah, I really have no idea like how viable this is, but we're gonna give it a shot. So we are forging like more magic resistance gear kind of all over the place, and we're gonna try to like work in some Firestorm groups, especially now because we have Army of Gold, right? And so that sets our natural protection on all of our units to 20. And gives us like 5 fire resistance across the board. And since fire damage is armor piercing, armor still does matter. And with that 20 natural protection plus any armor that our guys are wearing on top of that, we are going to be fairly resistant to Firestorm. So we should be able to actually work it into most of our armies pretty easily. The Long Dead Horsemen, right? They're not going to love it. I don't think they have fire weakness. Yeah, but they just have very little HP. Right? So they don't have a ton of protection, and I think some of this, none of it's natural protection, so that's good. So this will go up significantly, with Firestorm. So yeah, I'm not really sure how well these guys will stand up, but they're not like the ideal chaff for Firestorm. So, we may have to, do it without these guys, or just accept that we're going to be sacrificing them. The Trolls are, in pretty good shape just because they have really high hit points and they regenerate. And obviously the fire snakes don't care. So like a lot of our chaff that we currently have is a good fit for Firestorm. So yeah, we're going to try to mix in some Firestorm as well. We'll see. I suspect that we're probably going to have to fight a relatively major battle, with his skin shifters before we're able to get the Firestorm online. So it's like maybe the Firestorm isn't necessary and we don't have to risk some of our chaff. We'll see. But that's kind of the other major thing that we're doing. We're forging some of that anti-magic gear or magic resistance gear, so that we can have that as an option against skin shifters. And then I guess the last thing is Niflheim and the throne situation. So you need 8 thrones to win here. Let's take a look. 16 points, right? 2 each. 8 thrones. Niflheim has 4, so they are halfway to victory. And it's actually a little challenging, I think, for them to win. So like this is a throne they don't have, so this could be 5. But other than that, like there's nothing too easy. Like I don't actually know if they have this one, right? So that could be 6. We are going to eventually get a scout over there. And if that's 6, then because then at that point we're very attractive because this would be 7. And then this would be 8. So, and then of course, obviously they're sieging this one, right? So like this could substitute in. So like Niflheim is not super close, but I think like we can essentially, this is theirs in all but name, because there isn't really, unless Russ is pushing for it, but probably not, because right, Russ is trying to recapture this throne. And I think this was still independent last we saw. Again, we're going to try to get a scout over there. We need to get scouts in position. I think we're honestly a bit late on that. Part of the problem is like, yeah, these guys, well, this guy's, he's about to be old. So yeah, we've been losing scouts to old age. Like it's a problem, but we're definitely at the point in the game where we kind of want to keep an eye on the throne state so that, we can throw it out in the game chat to be like, hey, somebody's trying to rush to win. Other than Niflheim, like I don't think anybody's really close yet, at least like throne wise. There are a couple of unclaimed, and like I said, I know like one of them was the one we were just looking at, but some of the others are probably thrones that people own but have not chosen to claim. So somebody could be significantly closer than it actually looks, but like other than Niflheim in terms of actual claimed thrones, Russ has 3. So like they're actually not too far behind just from a pure throne standpoint. And then Therados actually only has 2. So I think, while Therados is still fairly powerful, and I think if there was no cataclysm coming, right, so we only have 2 years, right, so about 24 turns left before, things start to change. So we'll talk about cataclysm if we get there. But if there was no cataclysm, then I think Therados would be in a much stronger position, right, because they could just wait it out. Basically, it's like they're the only ones that like care basically zero about money, very little about money. And as long as they're able to keep Burden of Time up, like eventually that's going to crush all of the living nations. But it's not going to be fast enough. Like there's still going to be enough resources to go around. So yeah, and so like while I don't think anybody can really challenge them in the water, like I think Niflheim has probably been doing a decent job. We don't really know, but Niflheim is probably of the non-amphibious nations one of the best nations to go underwater, and I don't really think they've been able to make like a lot of headway underwater because it's a very tall order. So while Therados has like a really strong, secure base, and eventually they'll kill the whole world, they don't have enough time for that to actually like go through, and they clearly have not been able, like on the land, we have been seeing their flag pop up, here and there, like here's a Therodian flag, but like mostly, I don't know, maybe they've taken like all of this. It's not impossible, but the fact that, Niflheim chose to attack Russ, right? Like, I don't think they would do that if, things were going that badly with Therados. So I don't think Therados is actually, well, in a strong position. I don't think they're likely to win. Oops. Hey, province graph. We're actually ahead right now. We have the most provinces we've ever had. Things are going great. But anyway, to return to reality, the only other person, we just haven't really seen much of Femoria. They only have 1 throne, but I actually think they're somewhat big, especially now that they've eaten Vanheim, right? We know they're now here. This is probably the throne they have, right? They extend all the way over here. They have this good chunk of territory, which they've had for a decent amount of time. And now that they're, eating all of Vanheim, it's not impossible. They just sort of explode, and I think they're kind of the other possible contender to win, but no one's in a completely overpowering position just yet. So assuming interest remains in the game and it doesn't get called by a vote, I think this will be headed to Cataclysm. We'll see. we might be the reason that we don't go to Cataclysm, because this throne not super well defended. We are working on that, but we need to get more defense in here. So anyway, that covers the throne situation, and I think it also covers turn 77.